Hello, Pocatello.
Hello, Pocatello. Welcome to Hello, Pocatello, brought to you by Restyle Studios, where we highlight the people making a difference in our community. I'm your host, Keith Cook. Today's guest is Matt Hansen, founder and CEO of Matthew Hansen Realty. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, what brought you to real estate, and why Pocatello?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in the area. I was born in Blackfoot and grew up in Snake River area. In 2001, I graduated high school and I came to Pocatello, went to school at ISU, and other than some time on the road chasing money, basically, I've been here ever since. My background is construction and business management. Ran construction crews all the way up through like large-scale industrial projects and came back to Pocatello. We started buying houses that were just in poor shape, and we put a lot of love into them, and we sold them, made some profit, and, found that there's a equation there that works. And so I got my real estate license, and we've been selling real estate since.
Very nice, very nice. What'd you study in school at ISU?
So I went to school for business finance. I spent an awful lot of time in PE classes, skiing and Dutch oven cooking, and probably could have been a little more focused at school. Ultimately, I spent a lot of time building houses and time up at Pebble Creek, and I think I found that I like chasing money and girls more than I like chasing grades. And yeah, we ended up just out on the road building stuff.
What personal experiences do you have that have shaped the way you approach life and business today?
I feel like in some ways we kind of came from very little. Started at the bottom, so to speak. My first job on the construction site was pushing a broom and worked myself up through the ladder, building houses and then eventually bridges and infrastructure. Starting from the bottom and having to build things from nothing, and then where we've come a little bit further now. It's incredible to see that folks with a dream and then you write it down, you can really achieve some incredible things.
Do you feel like that's given you more appreciation for the process from starting out at the bottom and seeing what it takes from the lowest guy all the way up through, project managers and things like that?
I definitely think so. When you start in the trades, you envy the guy at the top. You think that's really where the limelight is. And having been at the top, having that project management job, you find out that crap can roll uphill, and that's not necessarily the easiest part of the job.
So one thing I do notice is that you're known for being incredibly optimistic, and I've noticed that even just in the past few minutes that I've talked with you before we started the show. Has that always been in your nature, or do you have flipped the script at some point that happened to make you such a positive person?
Probably actually a little bit of both. I don't know if I would have called it positivity back in the day. It might have even been like a seed of discontentment with myself, maybe, thinking that I could possibly do more. And then I found that really in life, it all starts with mindset anyway. So like you were saying, almost like a flip of the script, where eventually I realized that the story that I was telling myself, whether good or bad, was going to be true. So the more that I could focus on positive, the more positivity seemed to come my way.
Absolutely. So along those lines, what's something about Pocatello that people from outside of Pocatello might not know?
Okay. Here's a really interesting fact about Pocatello and most of this area. Did you know that none of the topsoil is from here? And there's a definitive way to know that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. The Bonneville Flood. The Bonneville Flood would have washed away absolutely everything that was natural to this area. somewhere between 15 and 16,000 years ago. So like the people that have come here, the dirt itself is blown in. So if you're ever at your house and the furniture's dusty, it's not you. It's all the dirt was blown in.
That's crazy. I do remember my parents telling me about that when you go through the gap. They said that a lot of the water from the Bonneville Flood came through there.
It did. It did. It washed through. And what's interesting, right now we're in downtown Pocatello. If you were to excavate very deep in this area, there are massive boulders underneath us right now because this is the boulder wash area. If you go out further where the gravel pits are, the lighter sediment started to settle further out. So you can actually geologically follow the timeline out through town and out into Chubbuck and across the plain there.
That's crazy. So you've worked in so many parts of East Idaho. What makes Pocatello unique compared to other cities?
You know, there's so many wonderful things about Pocatello. I love that Pocatello is a blue-collar town. We have real people here. We're educated, we're gritty, and we love being outdoors. Pocatello has an amazing sense of pride and community. I just don't know that that message is being told loud enough.
So if somebody was on the fence of wanting to come here or not, what would be the main thing that you would tell them to convince them that Pocatello is a place to be?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm the one to do the convincing. I think it's a choice for everybody. But, you know, say for example, if they had an office job, one of the best things about Pocatello is if you had a 1 hour break in an office job, you could be on a nature trail hiking during your lunch break and still make it back in time to be to the office.
Yeah, that is one really nice thing about Pocatello, especially if you're an outdoors person.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you're looking for the nightlife, I wouldn't necessarily say that Pocatello is a hot spot for that. But, you know, we have a lot to offer as far as music and venues but, you know, we're not stacked with big clubs.
Yep. Switch gears more towards your bread and butter, which is real estate. What's your best advice for someone thinking about buying their first home?
I would say absolutely take a chance on yourself and believe that you can. The number one thing that I hear from people in this situation is we're not sure if we're ready. And the first step to knowing that you're ready in the real estate game is getting with myself, and then I'll pair you with a lender. The lender's going to show us if you're ready right now, and if not, it's okay. They'll help us work through the steps to be ready. I've seen buyers here this summer showing up with less than $1,000 to buy a house. And that's less than rent in most places. So I really believe that it's within reach for most people.
Most exciting trend you're seeing in Pocatello real estate market right now?
There is some really beautiful inventory right now. We've experienced a bit of a shift in the market. The last couple of years, buyer demand was so strong that we couldn't keep up inventory-wise. Right now, buyers have a real chance. Sellers are doing very well on the deals that they're getting, and we're able to bring together a large volume of deals right now that work for everybody. And there's some beautiful houses on the market.
I've kind of driven around and looked at all the for sale signs, and it's always one of those thoughts in the back of your mind of fixing up one of those old Victorian style houses that they have here in Pocatello up by a shoe and things like that are just kind of always sit in the back of your mind when you're driving around.
Absolutely. We've flipped, fixed up, and improved several houses here in town, and it's an amazing feeling to take something that can need some love and then go through the process, get it rehabbed, find some buyers, get them into a place that works for them. We actually have 2 going right now. One up above us on the Highland Hill will be coming here shortly, and then another one in American Falls.
Conceptions you find a lot of people have when working with the real estate agent.
There's misconceptions about the process and maybe some misinformation out there. I would always advise interview more than one real estate agent. There is a huge disparity in the amount that agents will sell. Interesting fact, last year, about 75% of realtors sold 0 houses. So 3/4 of realtors are selling no houses last year. So, if someone's doing a handful, 1 to 5 per year, that's not a lot of volume compared to some folks that may be selling quite a bit more. So I would say definitely interview more than one person and ask them about their frequency of transaction.
Find having more transaction garners more trust.
To some extent, it's also an economies of scale issue. If you're not selling a fair amount of houses, doing things like large scale advertising, having administrative support, having transaction coordination, buyer representation full time, it would be harder to do if you weren't doing, if it wasn't operating as a business.
Absolutely. So, what role does mindset play in your career and personal life when it comes to that? When you have slow years and not a lot of work maybe coming in, what types of things do you do to stay motivated and still meet your clients' needs?
One thing that's been interesting, I've been self-employed for going on 8 years now, and not having the certainty of a paycheck coming is very motivating. And, until the last handful of years and the success that we've had with real estate before that, we had another business here in town. We started the local moving company, and kind of our MO at that point was very hand to mouth. I would work doing the moves themselves all day long, and then in the evenings go home and remodel houses, our house, our personal house. And I mean, it took me 30 months to get through that first house, just work all day, work all night. I feel like knowing that uncertainty, that the only safety net you have is the one you create, I think that mindset has fueled us to where, we know to keep the pedal on the metal.
Absolutely. Kind of help you, give you a little bit of, I guess, survival mindset, but also to, manage things, I think, differently than some people that just kind of never have to deal with adversity, I think.
There's a misconception maybe that, if you transact and it's a large check coming your way, the first thing you should do is go get a fancy vehicle, things like that. And, where we came from, the construction industry, and from very little, I knew not to go out there and, we wanted it to function as a business. And we knew that part of business is business cycle. So there's some looking ahead involved.
That you do out in the community, either professionally or personally, here in Pocatello?
Absolutely. I was brought up volunteering. My grandparents and parents were big in the community. They were business owners also. They raised us to support the communities that support us. So we get out and volunteer. We like to provide, example is like providing meals to the college kids through Trio. We did that just a little bit ago. Another group that we started on the business and mindset front, another local entrepreneur and myself, Morgan McKell, started a local coffee group, 7 a.m. at Gate City Coffee, and we call it the East Idaho Mastermind. And it's kind of like a group support, like a support group for entrepreneurs.
Support group is in, it's probably really stressful to do startup or be an entrepreneur.
It is. It's like, it's just like the meetings. You have to go up and you have to stand up and hi, my name is Matt and I'm addicted to entrepreneurship. No, it's not that format, but we do, as entrepreneurs, we face things that I feel like, if you have a job, you can go to it and then you can leave your job there. But as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, you don't get to turn the phone off at 5. And we face stresses that maybe others don't. And yeah, that group is a lot about mindset and community and also about being able to help each other through difficulties faced.
It's kind of a lonely place to be, from what I understand, starting any of that stuff up. Like you're saying, you don't wear just one hat. You're wearing all the hats. You're wearing the hat of the CEO, the hat of the COO, the hat of everything that you're doing. And so until you get to a certain point where you have other people that do that for you, being an entrepreneur, it'd probably be really good to have a group like masterminds to kind of gain some insight to maybe cut a couple of years off of that stress for you because you became successful enough to be able to support other people doing certain jobs so you can focus more on the mission and be able to drive things forward and drive more people towards success.
Absolutely. And that's what the group's there for is, whether people are at the startup phase, if it's just an idea, all the way up through scaling businesses. There is some incredible talent in that group and very diverse talent. I happen to be in real estate. There are coaches in there. There are marketers in there. There are people in there that mostly show up for community and support. So we're a very welcoming group.
You need to do to get into that group?
Absolutely. Just show up. Just show up, yeah.
Where's that at again?
7 a.m. on Mondays at Gate City Coffee.
Make sure you stop by there and say hello, and just know that you'll be asked to stand up and say hi also.
The truth is there's actually no standing up in the group. You don't have to. You could if you wanted to, so we could hear you better. But no, it's very casual. There's usually a lesson. We usually throw either a business or a mindset lesson in there. We always talk about our weeks, big wins that we had, and then any challenges faced. A lot of times challenges look like getting more clients, questions about marketing, questions about internet and search engine optimization. There's a lot of resources in that group.
A lot changing in the world with AI and all that other stuff. So I think it's probably helpful to be able to pick some people's brains that are maybe a little further along in utilizing that type of stuff to make their businesses operate better. And, and like you said, probably a lot of different types of businesses that can help each other, even if they seem unrelated.
Absolutely. I feel like Pocatello right now, we're seeing so many new businesses and so many things come to our area with the infrastructure that's being put in place by the transportation department. That is an over $100 million investment in our area. If you look around, there's apartment buildings being built. So our housing inventory and rental prices potentially will come down, supply and demand economics. Other places where people are investing, we are getting a Target. We have an Olive Garden. We're a real town now, and I feel like people should support that. And beyond that, beyond the big chains, there's a lot of local businesses that are doing well. And you can see in downtown, friends of mine and friends of yours also are investing. They're buying up a lot of the buildings and repurposing them. We have a new daycare here in downtown that's beautiful and a wonderful repurpose of an iconic local building.
And I think there's been a lot of change that's been happening. It kind of seemed like everything stalled out during COVID and everybody's just kind of been waiting to see what to do. And now it's kind of seems like a lot more of the community is starting to come together and drive to a certain goal instead of hunkering down and, holding on to your pennies and all that other stuff, And it's kind of good to see like the economics of Pocatello starting to pick up again and get back to business and put more jobs in the workforce. And that also in turn allows people to buy a house and, Absolutely. An investment that's a lifelong investment in a lot of cases and ends up being really important. So
Maybe where you were going with that is a robust economy. I feel like Pocatello has potentially passed a threshold where we're a single employer or a few employers that are driving the economy. Now it almost seems like there's a web, an interweaving, like you mentioned, housing, infrastructure, retail, several layers to an economy that are pushing us forward. Yeah. Where I'm in real estate, of course, I'm seeing demand for something that's very expensive, right? So people are coming to town and they're buying $500,000 houses. The question that I get is, Matt, why are your houses so cheap? Now, locals don't think that. We're from a different mindset and a different place where these houses didn't cost as much. But from an outside perspective, we are still very cheap. Our average price point today is about $320,000. Average price point in California is $1.1 million. So, if you come to town and you're coming from somewhere, even Ohio or Illinois, a $500,000 house might look very different. If you look at a $500,000 house in town, you can get some beautiful stuff.
Yeah, $1 million will get you an apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a studio.
Yeah, you can, you'd be lucky to get a condo, like, for example, because it doesn't just have to be the purchase of a home. It can be rentals. There are places where rentals are very expensive. People think they're expensive here, but, you're still seeing whole houses for $1,500 a month here in town. If you were in a big city, like, you might be paying $2,000 for a studio apartment. So I guess it's all relative, and it's important that we recognize the beauty of what we have here in town. Is it perfect? No. Is it getting better? In my opinion, absolutely.
And like you were saying with the web of employers, you've got the site where a lot of the nuclear stuff with the portable nuclear reactors and things like that, a lot of that stuff takes a lot of good paying jobs, and keeps them in Pocatello, Idaho Falls, Blackfoot area, and having those solid jobs, the semiconductor factory, there's a lot bigger things, even though the Hoku thing kind of fell through and all the craziness that happened with that, there's still a lot of big businesses that are drawn to Idaho in general, but also to East Idaho, and being able to have a smart workforce like we have, that's very, very skilled and, highly educated, and just all around a good place to put some of these businesses. They've had the FBI here forever, but a lot of big employers that bring money that stays here in the community and builds a community.
And it's twofold. Big business, obviously, that might be more recognizable potentially, but it's a fact that small business is actually the bulk of economy across the nation and then here locally. One thing that I'm kind of seeing more of, people willing to take a chance on themselves. I've seen some interesting businesses here locally that you might not know exist. Things like maybe like a genealogy database and an in-home business, but doing very well. There are businesses that aren't as visible, but are here local, that are doing well and supporting the economy as a whole. So, we might, if you don't see like the big name brand show up, that may not matter as much, because as an economy, I feel like we've talked about, we're getting more layered as an economy.
You think COVID helped with that a little bit, when everybody quit going to work and said, maybe I didn't need that work. I'm doing just fine without going there, and I enjoy being around my family. Maybe something that I have a little bit more control over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people starting their own businesses that way, and having kind of being forced into the realization like they have a little bit more control over where their ship's going than they realized before.
Yes, without a doubt. And I feel like that's twofold. I absolutely agree. I think that happened. I think when people were forced to go home, they realized there may not be as much security in their job as they thought. So self-reliance might be an option. And then the second part of COVID, the story is economic migration. Other places where there was more restrictive policy, people ended up leaving. And they didn't necessarily target this area. They may have gone to Boise because they still wanted the city life. And then what we saw here locally was that folks would leave those other places and then migrate to here based on affordability again. So we're seeing so many new faces and so much new talent show up. There's some really premier things that are happening. You may have to look for it, but it's happening.
Really kind of interesting to see how a town changes over multiple years. Now I'm 40 years old and I grew up in Blackfoot, and I came and visited my grandma up here about once every couple weeks, walk up to ISU or to Bilo Foods, and did all that stuff. And now you kind of look at the town 20, 30 years later, and it's just, some of it's the same, and there's a lot of things that have changed. The Holt Arena changing names and under new sponsorship, I guess is what you'd call it, with ICCU. It's really nice to see that they've put that money to keep that beautiful and renew it, because it is a staple of this town. I think they only built 2 back in the day when they built that, and that was the first one.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody said the ISU used to be a military base or part of an air base.
I've been looking into Pocatello's history, and we have an awful lot to be proud of. The people that came through, of course, indigenous at first, very strong people. And then the people who came through as settlers, the Oregon Trail coming through this area. That was more than 250,000 people passed through here, the ones that came with the railroad. And as this town grew up around the railroad, in fact, was incorporated in part because of the railroad. And then moving, from that single employer economy to a bigger, more robust city, it's beautiful to see improvement in all the neighborhoods. There are older houses. And to me, that's opportunity, because when we fix them up and we get families into them, look at Old Town. 30 years ago, it didn't look like it does now. There's some beautiful houses being put together now.
Yeah. More people move in, then you don't have the old things fall apart. One thing I found in downtown Old Town, there's a lot of these buildings that are rented out for fairly cheaply because it's better to have somebody in them and using them, because if you don't, they deteriorate quite quickly if you don't have somebody occupying those buildings. And so having a thriving community and, good economics, then you don't have your old towns fall into so far disrepair that they end up, becoming ghost towns, essentially, like some of these towns happen. You got Detroit where the automakers left, and there's just thousands and thousands of houses that are just empty. And at one point there were $1 million, $2 million houses, and they're just got boards on the windows and nobody to move into them. And the economy's not there to make that place flourish anymore. So
yeah, absolutely. In talking about downtown, one thing that I've seen, like we were talking about, maybe call it 10 years ago, those houses would have been what we considered relatively inexpensive. But also, I feel like downtown had somewhat of a stigma that was based on the economics that surrounded it. Now, if you look downtown, most of those houses, when cleaned up, will go for over $200,000, which is the modern pocket of affordability. I can get a first-time home buyer into that house. But here's the thing. To afford a $200,000 house, you most likely have to have employment, and you have to have at least some form of credit. That is a responsible citizen. We're putting responsible citizens, we're putting families in these houses downtown. That stigma is gone. These are family neighborhoods now. And if you look at the houses in town, they're beautiful. We have wonderful architecture.
And they did there's been a lot of work to renew downtown. They just redid the underpass, and they're still working on that. They've done all the neons. Pocatello High School's had a facelift and been kept alive. And I remember, the school's been open forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like
and
looking,
it looks beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like looking at some of the older buildings, some of the older multifamily, like we were talking about, some of the places that were rougher in town. That probably was central to some of the multifamily that was very like on the lower end economically. Investors came in and they put a lot of money into fixing up some of those places, and they're identifiable because they're repainted. So if you look at some of the older multifamily here in downtown, it's actually really like it's been facelifted. It's good looking buildings now. And with that also, it kind of, we all rose together, so to speak. It got better, the tenancy got better, the town's getting better.
Don't invest unless they see value in it, right? And so that if you're getting investment, people are seeing value of the community of investing their money here, because not all investors are from Pocatello, are they?
Here's a couple interesting misconceptions about investment. Most people think that large institutional investors hold the bulk of investment, and that's not true. The bulk of investors are mom and pop investors who are just like us, people that want to grow their equity. Here's the reason. Average equity of an investor or of a renter sits at about $10,000. Once you become a homeowner, it's between 38 and 43 times that. So once you buy a house, and I get you into growing your equity that way, the average is $380,000 to $423,000 of equity. If that equity is sitting untapped and I can help you get that into an investment property that will cash flow every month and improve your financial position, you become an investor. Not a large institutional investor. You're someone who's just like me or just like you, providing housing for someone else who needs to jump on that real estate ladder.
Absolutely.
There's two ways that you get a hire talent.
Mm-hmm.
You can train talent, or you can hire people that are already trained. Either way, you're going to pay.
Yep.
And it's like if you bring them out of school and you have to train them up, they'll cost less, but it's going to cost you. Yeah. Or if you hire someone with a depth of experience, you probably better pay them.
Well, it's like Mike Rowe was saying as I was watching, because he's watching all the stuff that's going on, Mm-hmm. And he's like, we've been sounding the alarm for this long. And he's like, I've got all these $1 million or $1 billion companies coming to me and saying, where are my employees that I need? We're shortage of all these skilled laborers and all this other stuff. And Mike Rowe told me, he says, they're in the 8th grade. Right now, they're in the 8th grade.
That's the thing.
You need to invest there if you want the return on people that'll trust your company, work hard, do all that other stuff,
I feel like that's
the best answer in the world.
It is. And, I feel like it's relevant to the conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
That it's like people, the main thing that I hear is like, there's no jobs in Pocatello. You're not looking. There are jobs in Pocatello. They might not necessarily be exactly what you want at that moment. But like a guy like me, I started on a broom and worked myself up through it. You can go get a job. It doesn't have to be a perfect fit initially. But places are hiring.
Everything's kind of a stepping stone.
A stepping stone, exactly.
Even like you said, I started at Teleperformance back in the day.
Exactly.
I didn't love it.
Yeah, but we had to pay bills, right?
Yeah. Even when I didn't have to pay bills, I wanted to go do fun stuff. And
you wanted fun money.
I wasn't a trust fund baby.
Man, me neither. That was the whole idea. I had to go to school because I didn't have a trust fund. And you start at the bottom and you work yourself up. Now you're working at a local, manufacturer, a good paying job. But you didn't start necessarily at the good paying job. We work ourselves up.
Yeah. Absolutely. I joined the National Guard. That was my trust fund, and it was paid for with blood, sweat, and tears,
Absolutely.
All that. But it gave me skills. And then I kept going, I went to ISU.
Yeah, that was my question is, did you equip yourself with a skill set and with knowledge?
And a lot of it was learned. I grew up building houses in the summer with my dad, putting roofs
Yeah.
on houses, doing tile. I
Wow.
asked him one day, I was like, how come you do this for free for everybody? He says, well, I do it for free for everybody else so that when I do it for myself, I know how to do it and I do a really good job.
Practice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And my
absolutely.
dad was very meticulous. And so I learned how to do a little bit of construction math and
Yeah.
climbing on roofs and doing things like
Yeah.
that. But he
Yeah.
grew up here in Pocatello, and
Your dad did.
yeah, he did.
Oh wow, so you're generational to this valley.
Yeah, I grew up like exclusively in Blackfoot, but yeah, my dad and my mom grew up here for quite a bit of time here. But yeah, my dad, they had 10 kids and lived a block away from the Pocatello greenhouse. And he worked as a teenager all the way up to into his 20s, I believe, working at the greenhouse and,
Wow.
Green Acres School and
Yeah.
the whole shebang. They started
Yeah.
out in one of those basement houses
Yeah.
that just looks like it's a roof sitting on the ground. And, my dad learned from his dad who worked out at FMC.
Okay.
I've got uncles here that have been staples in the community and done all kinds of different things, and just a lot of family here. I knew if I ever got stuck in Pocatello, I had about 10 places to stay.
Perfect. Yeah, that's one of the best parts about Pocatello is it's multi-generational and it's extremely diverse. And a lot of people can say that, like as I've posted in local Facebook groups, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I remember, grandpa did this there," or "My uncle worked there for years," just like you're saying. It's a multi-generational thing that the sense of community, I think, comes from having deep roots.
I think, you know, I used to not love Pocatello because I was partial to Blackfoot,
Oh, okay.
and there's always that little rivalry between, when you're in high school
Yeah.
of, oh, the Pocatello people, they're crazy or whatever.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older and spent a lot of time here, there's a lot of people think that they might be pigeonholed here, but they don't realize how many people live here. And that if you get out of your house and you take a drive around town, me and my wife used to call them, dream drives or whatever you want to call them. But we'd jump in the car and drive around and look at beautiful houses that we wanted to eventually maybe have something like that, but just kind of set goals and expectations of what we wanted to accomplish, in the next 40 years or whatever. And, a lot of that is like what we were talking about earlier, getting up, putting one foot in front of the other and going out and doing it, doing the footwork, doing the job that you might not completely love. What I've told my kids is, it's all about perspective. I kind of joked around that you can be standing in manure and complain that you're in manure or sell it for somebody's garden, and it's the same situation, but two different ways of going about it. And I think, there's a lot of great talent here in Pocatello and a lot of really, really awesome people that maybe after COVID, they need to branch out a little bit, take a little bit of risk on themselves,
Yeah.
like you're saying, make that investment, hopefully go towards you.
Absolutely.
You know?
Like if you need help buying a house, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Same thing with investing. If you need help getting an investment, we do that. But yeah, kind of further what you were saying, I started that local campaign that is be you, believe in yourself. And that's kind of the root of the campaign is Pocatello has a beautiful identity. We're not white collar. Like we couldn't dress up as white collar if we tried. We're real people. We're smart. We're blue collar. We work hard. And I want Pocatello to be proud of who it is. But I also, it starts with mindset. So be you and believe in yourself. And I want that for all of Pocatello.
I think a big reason why we started this podcast, is showing the good sides of Pocatello, the great reasons why people are here. It's plenty easy to look on the news and see a bunch of horrible things about all types of stuff. And we get that happens everywhere, and kind of being a voice of good things and good people and good causes, and, people that so far we've found to be inspiring, either by circumstance or by choice or by hard work, So it's been a learning experience, even in the little time that we've started doing it, but it's really refreshing because it makes my job easier to interview great people, because it's not hard to have a conversation, because it's genuine. It might take a minute to get there.
Yeah.
Because I get a little bit nervous.
Oh,
I'm generally more reserved. Me and my wife joke that when COVID happened, we didn't really notice because we didn't go out and do a whole lot of stuff.
You're like, everyone else is staying home.
It's like everybody's talking about how stressful it is. Like, this is kind of what we've been doing,
Yeah.
But we've kind of gotten out in the community a lot more and just ran into really, really cool people, and people that we talk about constantly about what they've got going on, people that we find inspiring, really, and the things to do in Pocatello, and why community is so important, and what places you can go to find that in Pocatello, and just worthwhile conversations is what we're looking for. And if we can help people out along the way, that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
But what kinds of things would you like to say to Pocatello if anybody's listening?
Man, Pocatello, just believe in yourself. There's a lot of negativity out there, and I think that being conscious and being thoughtful of the things that are going on in our community, I think it's very important. But I also think that whether we say that we can or we say that we can't, we're going to be right. I believe we can. Pocatello has this beautiful sense of community. We are set in the most beautiful environment. All we have to do is be loud about how proud we are to be Pocatello.
Yeah, being loud's good, especially when you go to ISU games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go out to the baseball games.
Yeah. Let's get behind local sports on the collegiate level. Let's get behind local sports with our kids that are in school. Be supportive of local businesses. These local businesses are owned by your friends. So support local. Go out to Revive at 5 and be seen. That's an amazing place and an amazing community resource. And you can buy local gifts, local crafts. You can eat local food.
Same place is also Farmers Market, and they've been holding a lot of other awesome things.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like the downtown shops that we have available. Go down and visit them and find out what is here in our local community. I was asked the other day, hey, part of the reason that I have to leave town is because we don't have this available here. Well, it turns out what they were asking for, we have 5 of those here locally. They asked about bookshops. Said, I have to go out of town because we don't have any local bookshops. There's 5 of them.
Yeah, really cool ones too.
Really great local bookshops. So maybe it's a situation where we're not aware of what we have. So do a little bit of digging. It's here locally, and support your friends.
The thing that we're going to try and do is spotlight some of those things that people don't really realize are here. For one reason or another. We ran into a bookshop the other day. What is it, the White Owl or whatever it's called?
Jacob Hubers owns that.
Man, that place was so cool. Just if you want to go see some really old, interesting books, man, go over there. He's got a great collection.
With Jacob, he's actually a member of our mastermind. He comes to our coffee group. That, what an incredible local resource. Not just the books, but the knowledge that Jacob has. He is a kind individual, and it's really neat to see him pick up an old book and be able to explain in depth, like Pocatello, there's amazing history here. We just have to be open to listening to it.
You got to find the right people to squeeze for information, and they're just overflowing with a lot of cool things you never knew, tunnels underneath the old town, all the crazy stuff.
Absolutely. Our community's people, I think it's all about having a connection to the community. And part of that, like you said, you've got to leave your basement. You've got to leave your house. Come out and experience what Pocatello has to offer. There's a lot of fun going on in town.
A lot of the food truck stuff. Sometimes I'm surprised it's not busier, but I think it really is just getting people back used to getting out and talking with people. I think I've harped on this the past few episodes, but I feel it, and maybe it's because I'm getting old, but everybody's so stuck on social media and in their phones and all that other stuff that people are losing what it means to have like actual interaction, look somebody in the eyes and go do that stuff. And when I've gotten out and done that here in Pocatello, I've met some of the coolest people in the world, and you'll never do that with your head in your cell phone, even rock concerts are different,
Yeah, absolutely.
Used to have everybody involved, and now, probably half of them are recording so they can remember it instead of experiencing it while it's happening,
we all get to choose the way that we experience life. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with sharing your experience out there and putting it out for the world to enjoy with you. And that's what social media is. It's a great tool for that. And then the flip side of that coin is being there, being present, and being a part of, right? So take, for example, Revive at 5. Local music, the food trucks that you mentioned. Lookout Point is incredible. It's so much fun to take your kids there. And when I go, I run into a lot of people that I know, a lot of wonderful smiling faces. That's better than endless scrolling.
Really well to where it's a good environment. You're never, going even to the state fair, sometimes you can feel threatened by some people that are walking around, or stuff that's happening.
Yeah, if you're not too people-y, right?
Yeah. And Revive, even if you're not too people-y, it is a great event. It's low-key. You can sit back and relax in a little easy chair and just enjoy some music and have some food and go home. You can stay the whole time, stay a little bit, and it's not high pressure. It's just a really well put on event, and they've done a really good job with everything that's been done in that park. And
it also supports local.
Yeah.
It's supported by a local organization. It benefits their causes, the things they put forth. And there's so many, it's worth mentioning. There's so many wonderful initiatives going on. You can almost pick what you're passionate about and then become involved in that. Yeah. We have the Veterans Memorial Building that needs help. Kids always need help, mentorship. And so really you could pick your whatever it is you're passionate about and get involved in that and then be a part of your community.
Memorial buildings, kind of near and dear to me. I'm a veteran of the 116th, and, it's definitely important to have those buildings and meeting places. But with that one, it's got a lot of historical stuff to it.
Yeah, my aunt and uncle were married there. Yeah, there's a connection. There's a personal connection to the building and the military organizations that call it home and the things that they're able to do, having that as a home base. We need it as a local resource.
Hoping, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with that at the moment, but, if anybody's feeling the heart, there's definitely some money that needs to be made to get that back up to par to where they can continue to use it for a lot more years. But and even at this point, I think they raised like $100,000,
Yeah.
And so it shows that the community cares about that place, because it's not only used for veteran stuff. It's been used for things for years and years and years, and just has so much history, and it's worth keeping around. And a lot of these buildings end up serving more than dual purposes for a lot of organizations that do a lot of good in the community. You know, the Elks helps out a lot with a lot of clubs for a meeting space so that they can keep their overhead low and help more people. Absolutely. You know, so they're not having to pay for a whole business space that they use maybe once a week. Yeah. So, you know, just a lot of really cool stuff that I've found in Pocatello. And I have heard your name a lot, man. I'll be honest with you. So I was kind of looking forward to this interview, and
well, I appreciate it.
We really appreciate you having on the podcast, and hopefully interview you here in a while longer and hear some more cool stuff that's going on.
Yeah, let's get together regularly. Maybe we'll set it up on an interval. Man, I sure appreciate it. I'm so humbled to hear you say you've heard my name. I'm just a regular guy from Pocatello. I've been so fortunate to have the best clients, the best friends, and support here locally. People getting behind, you know, the idea that Pocatello could be, it can reach its potential, and we're all going to play our part in it. And we're so blessed to have a community that supports us. So we really appreciate you having us.
I've noticed you don't get much done if you don't talk about it, you know? And so, you know, I've always kind of admired the loud and proud people that can get out and rile everybody up and get them engaged and all that. Because I've never been that person. I'm usually the one, I'm the hammer at the end, you know?
I can say on some of the local social media groups, I've gotten people riled up, you know, because in fact, I heard it labeled as toxic positivity. And I took that as a compliment. Like, you know what? Thank you that I'm so positive and pushing this message so hard. We're being heard. We're finally being heard. And I don't want folks that are being negative to be heard louder than we are. So I will be toxically positive when it comes to Pocatello.
We'll always appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming on the podcast.